to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. Sometimes parents who contact me aren't sure whether they're actually estranged from their adult child. They have contact, maybe even regular contact, including visits and phone calls, but they feel estranged. There's a feeling of distance between themselves and their children, but it's not physical. Instead of a lack of actual contact, there's a lack of emotional connection. If you're in touch with your child, but the relationship feels more distant, more stressful, or more effortful than it used to be, or than you would like it to be, I would call that emotional estrangement. You may experience this kind of estrangement following a reconciliation. In this case, there was a previous physical estrangement that's now in the process of healing. You've managed to reestablish contact, but a feeling of real connection is lagging behind. Or you may feel emotionally estranged from an adult child from whom there was never a textbook physical distance kind of estrangement. This emotional disconnect you feel between yourself and your child is the estrangement. In either case, whether you're reconciled after an estrangement or this is the estrangement, it can feel like you're walking on eggshells every time you interact with your child, or walking on cracked glass, as one of our Reconnection Club members puts it. The upshot is you can't just be yourself and relax in the company of your child. Other estranged parents who have no contact with their children at all might envy you the contact and communication you do have, but you know how uncomfortable it is to feel distant from your child who's right there in front of you. It's a different kind of pain, but it is still pain. If this describes your current relationship with an adult child, it might help you to understand some of the possible reasons for this distance you're feeling. This is not going to be a complete listing of all the reasons why this could be happening, of course, but here are some possibilities to explain what's going on and why things are so uncomfortable between you. And of course, I'll also talk about some things you might do about each of these. Number 1, there's an elephant in the room. Maybe there's something important that you both know about but haven't talked about yet, because to bring it up would be scary, difficult, or both. So it hasn't been addressed yet. If there is something like that, an elephant in the room that's affecting your current relationship, and you know it won't go away until you do address it, then you will need to bring it up at some point with your child. But you'll want to try to do this in a way that protects your child from unnecessary stress. Not talking about it at all is not the answer, if the fact that you're not talking about it is taking a toll on your relationship. Discussing whatever it is will be stressful to some degree, but consider this. You can remove unnecessary stress, but you can't remove all stress, not for your child or for yourself. If you're scared to talk about the topic with your child, it will be almost impossible for you to help your child feel comfortable having that conversation with you. So maybe don't attempt this alone. Find a local counselor or therapist or someone to help you figure out how best to approach the conversation you want to have. And no, they don't need to specialize in parent-child estrangement. A good family therapist will do just fine. So if there's an elephant in the room that's continuing to create tension between you, seek professional help to support you in having the conversation you need to have about it with your child. And just one more thing about this particular point. Ask yourself, is the tension definitely mutual? Or could this be just something that you are anxious about, and it's not a problem for your child at all? If that is the case, find that local mental health professional. They can help you sort through what's bothering you and figure out what you might be able to work on yourself versus what really needs to be tackled together with your child. The second reason why there might be emotional estrangement is that it feels like you don't know each other. If it's been a while since you've had much two-way contact, it will naturally take time to get comfortable communicating again. In some ways, the time that's gone by and your different life experiences have made you more like strangers to each other. And that's not as horrific as it may feel. It just means that there's catching up to do. Give yourself and your child time to get used to each other again. Don't assume that a lack of comfort with your child today means the relationship is doomed to be forever uncomfortable. You can build familiarity and ease over time by concentrating on getting to know the adult your child is today. Your new relationship may not be the same as the one you had before, but it can still be fulfilling for both of you. So if it feels as though you're strangers to each other, acknowledge that to yourself. Grieve the relationship you once had if you feel a loss, but then focus on getting to know the person your child is today. Try not to push the river. It does take time to get comfortable when your relationship has changed. The third reason why you might feel at a distance from your child is that your feelings have been hurt. Your child may have ended the physical estrangement, but the injury of her words or behavior during that period hasn't healed yet. You may be protecting yourself, whether consciously or unconsciously, from being hurt again. You don't trust your child, and so you don't want to get too close. Your guard is still up. Please don't blame yourself or your child if you're not yet able to forgive and forget a painful period in your lives. You're a human being with a heart that takes time to heal. Just recognize that your own walls may be up, and any guarded or cautious behavior you see in your child may very well be a reflection of your own behavior. It's like a feedback loop, with guardedness from one causing the other to act guarded as well. An important part of the solution here is to process the pain of what's happened between you with someone other than your child. You need to be able to acknowledge and work through your hurt feelings with compassion and patience. Most of us benefit from having a compassionate witness to our pain, whether it be a spouse or partner, a friend, or a therapist. Just choose someone who won't badmouth your child in response, but will simply allow you to express your hurt feelings and offer compassion so that you can heal. Remember that all healing takes time. And not only that, you often have to be intentional about healing when it comes to emotional injuries. So get some good support from someone else you trust while you work through the pain and anxiety you may still feel in relation to your child. The fourth cause of emotional estrangement that I want to present today is simply life circumstances. Even though your child is back in touch with you, he's also involved with all the other responsibilities of his adult or young adult life. He may have school, a job, a family, or all of those to take care of. Or maybe he's working his way toward attaining his goals. Let's you and I hope that your relationship is not your child's highest priority in his life. The fact that your child has decided not to shut you out anymore doesn't necessarily mean she's ready for weekly lunches or daily texts. Allow for the fact that she's working on building the components of life that those of us who are older have already built for ourselves. What feels like too much distance to you could easily be just a consequence of her full schedule and other priorities. Be glad she has those, and cultivate as much patience with your child and her circumstances as you can. The fifth and final source of emotional estrangement that I want to talk about today is implicit boundary setting. Not all adults will tell their parents explicitly, "Please don't ask me about my relationships," or "Please don't text me when I'm at work." Instead, they'll just react with irritability, coldness, or silence when you happen to wander across a boundary line. Your child, who's now an adult, may have very different and many more boundaries than the ones you knew about before. So if things sometimes feel tense between you and other times feel fine, pay attention to what happened just before things got tense. You might have bumped up against a boundary you didn't know was there. If you do stumble on a boundary, it's okay to ask if that's what happened. You could say, "Would you rather I didn't do that?" or something. You need to know because you don't want to violate boundaries unknowingly. And you don't have to guess about other people's boundaries. You can just ask about them. If your child does set a boundary, try not to take it personally. And importantly, don't judge or debate that boundary. We all get to decide for ourselves how we'd like to be treated. An example of a boundary for adult children might be, "Don't offer advice unless I ask for it." That's a reasonable request, and it will go best if you try to respect it. You get to set boundaries too, by the way. All healthy relationships have boundaries. They exist in part to make it safe for both people to be close to each other. But people are not always clear about their own boundaries until someone steps on them. So asking your child about boundaries will help both of you to know where those lines are. So those are 5 areas of potential emotional estrangement between you and your child. Number 1, an elephant in the room that needs to be discussed. And by the way, not everything that feels like an elephant to you may need to be discussed. So you might need some input from a third party to figure out what's important to bring up and what is maybe okay to just tolerate. Number 2, not knowing each other well enough to be comfortable. Number 3, hurt feelings that haven't healed yet. 4, your child's life circumstances. And possibly related to number 4, number 5, boundaries. It may not be necessary for you to address the awkwardness of emotional estrangement as much as you just have to tolerate it until things get better. Sometimes time is really the answer. But if you're looking for ways you might smooth things over a bit, remember the best relationship repair tool available to you, which is the apology. You don't have to have done anything wrong to use apologies to great effect. Apologize for the elephant in the room or for not feeling ready to talk about it. Apologize for any awkwardness you're communicating through self-conscious behavior. Explain that you need time to get to know your child again and you really want things to go well. Apologize for your own guardedness that's due to the fact that you're still processing the previous estrangement. Encourage your child to approach you with any questions or concerns. And lastly, apologize for boundary violations as soon as they become evident. Good apologies are flexible tools that can make people feel closer and more connected. So go ahead and use them liberally in all your relationships. For inspiration, listen to episode 12, Why Apologize If You're Not Guilty? Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please, take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.